Mr. Joe Gibney from TAC Air. And with that, I'm turning the floor over to Joe. I'm excited to have you here, and thank you for joining us as we talk about the business of flight.
All right, thank you, Shannon, and good morning to everybody. It's great to be here, and it's great to see some familiar faces and old friends out there. It's a real honor for me to help kick off this first annual Business of Flight. So Shannon gave me pretty wide latitude to talk about business today, and I thought I would share with you my thoughts about the strength and diversity of this great aviation aerospace business, the important role a solid business education has played for me, and also a bit of my personal story and kind of how it pertains to those two things. So I want to start out by saying that I've got no particular insight into the industry other than having been a part of it for the last 30 years, but I do think there are some themes that I have observed and that are kind of demonstrated in my story that are useful to you. I'll also say that my comments are mostly focused today, are mostly directed to students at Embry-Riddle. I am really happy to see some colleagues and old friends here, and I hope you'll bear with me as I kind of share with you my observations about this business. One of the things that I think has always been really interesting about the aviation aerospace business is the fact that there's so much passion in this business, and I think way more than most other industries that I have seen and participated in. There's just a passion in this industry, and I think it's for good reason. It's because we have the opportunity to do some pretty cool stuff. So I play golf every weekend with the same three guys, and three guys that have nothing to do with my career or my day job. One of they're all three my age, all three successful in their own careers. One's an IT executive, one has an insurance company, and one is a high school principal. And they all think that I have the coolest job in the world. And they're not wrong. The fact is that all of us in this business have pretty cool jobs, and I think, as a student, getting ready to come out and to join this industry, the fact that you've got that passion and that you're entering this really cool business, I think you'll go well. So first, a little bit about me. I graduated from Embry-Riddle's MBA program in Daytona Beach back in 1998, so it was 23 years ago. I've always been in aviation. My first job at age 16 was working at a local FBO as a line tech at a little mom and pop FBO. I moved airplanes, swept hangar floors, cleaned toilets, pretty much whatever was needed. But that job at age 16 was kind of my entry point into this cool industry, and has really set me up for a career. When I graduated from Embry-Riddle back in '98, I went to work for one of the large FBO chains. And as an aside, I got that job based upon connections that I developed with the faculty and administration at Embry-Riddle. So, I think a key takeaway from my remarks today to business students currently is take advantage of the opportunity you have to develop relationships now, both with your fellow students and with the administration and faculty and staff, because it's those relationships that will help kind of sustain you as your career goes on. So by the way, I'll talk a lot about the term FBO, and Todd, you'll have to forgive me as I take a minute and explain what an FBO is to any FBO newbies out there. Essentially, FBOs, it stands for fixed base operation. It is essentially a private airport terminal for business jets and other private aircraft that are used in an airport. So some highlights of my career. I've lived in 8 cities, 2 countries. I've had the opportunity to travel literally all over the world in my career. Uh, and there's some fundamental things that I learned at Embry-Riddle that I think have helped to advance my career. So I've worked in mergers and acquisitions, and I learned how to apply the fundamentals of finance and business strategy. I've been an FBO general manager, learned how to lead teams and to lead individuals, and importantly, how to run a business, and learned what it means to have a P&L that you're responsible for, and there's nothing that makes those lessons you learn in accounting class really come home like having a report card produced every month that is grading your performance, and that's really what financial statements are. I was a sales and marketing executive, and learned about revenue and selling and branding. uh, I ran an FBO organization in Europe and had the opportunity to learn about different cultures and business models and currencies. um, I also took a slightly divergent path for a few years, and worked for an airline ground handling company. um, uh, Probably one of the most challenging, difficult opportunities that I've had the occasion to work in. It's a tough industry, low margins, lots of people. At that time, I had over 2,000 employees reporting to me. Um, Extremely high customer service expectations on part of the airlines. But when I look back, that 4-year period is probably a time when I learned the most as well. So as Shannon said, I'm now the Chief Operating Officer at the Arnold Companies. I oversee our aviation division. So we have 16 FBOs. We have a real estate company called TAC Private Hangars, and we have a company called Keystone Aviation, which is an aircraft charter business. So we've got about 25 airplanes, everything from single engine PC-12s to Gulfstream G550s. We've also got a large aircraft maintenance business based in Salt Lake City. So during this business of Flight Week, as we talk about the real strength and diversity of the aviation aerospace business, the truth is I've had an opportunity to participate pretty meaningfully in a big swath of that business. Um, and I can truthfully say that, while I've learned a tremendous amount in the 23 years I've been doing this, the fundamentals I learned at Embry-Riddle were really key to my success. And as I've followed the careers of my classmates over the years, and the folks I went to school with, by and large, have taken pretty divergent career paths from the one that I've taken. There's a common theme, and that's that Embry-Riddle foundation that we've got. Um, Interestingly, when I went to school, most of my classmates were interested in pursuing jobs in the airline industry, and now, 20 something years on, you know, those folks, many of them are in senior positions at airlines, both in the US and overseas, in senior positions in, operations and revenue management and marketing, et cetera. Um, I've also got friends that I went to school with that work as financial consultants and industry trade representatives, and people that work in the aviation insurance business and manufacturing, credit cards, fuel. I mean, it is a massively diverse business. But again, Embry-Riddle prepared them well, and the two things they have in common are that they're successful, and that Embry-Riddle education. Um, so even though my perception as a young person was that there were really only two career paths, airlines and general aviation, my experience and the experience of my peers suggests that it's a much broader industry than that, and there are lots of opportunities. And in fact, in the 20 something years I've been part of this business, the opportunities have only gotten bigger. Um, this weekend, I was looking at the FAA forecast, which is a document that FAA puts out every year that looks at all kinds of trends and forecasts in the aviation aerospace business. And it had been a couple of years since I'd looked at the FAA forecast, and there's whole sections of the FAA forecast that didn't even exist, 25 years ago. Things like forecasts around commercial space or unmanned aerial vehicles or light sport aircraft. So for students just entering the business right now, I would tell you the sky's literally the limit. When you go to compete for a job and your employer sees that you went to Embry-Riddle, they're going to immediately know that you have that passion, that you're one of us. So speaking of the FAA forecast, a few things jumped out at me when I was looking at it that I think really highlight the strength and diversity of the business and just the massive scale that the business has. Now, the numbers I'm about to put out are 2019 numbers, and so obviously they were impacted by COVID last year, but they're still pretty amazing, and I think really demonstrate just the size and scale of the business. So 2019, 800 million domestic U.S. enplanements, another 250 million enplanements to and from the U.S. on U.S. and foreign carriers, 43 billion revenue tons of cargo, almost 7,500 aircraft in the U.S. air carrier fleet, and that's mainline and regional. That is a massive part of the industry. In the part of the business that I work in, over 200,000 general aviation aircraft, 10,000 turboprops, 15,000 light jets, and almost 3,000 light sport aircraft, which, by the way, is a category of aircraft that literally didn't even exist when I went to school. So that just shows you how much the industry continues to change and evolve. Also talking about things that are changing and evolving, there's almost 1 million recreational unmanned aerial system owners and almost 400,000 commercial UAS operators. Now, in the FBO business, we care a lot about fuel, and so that's one of the things that I find fascinating about the FAA forecast. In 2019, U.S. airlines consumed 2 billion gallons of jet fuel. I'm sorry, 22 billion gallons of jet fuel, and the general aviation segment consumed over 2 billion gallons, plus another 230 million gallons of avgas. So clearly, it's a very, very diverse business. Whether your passion's airlines or in my case, business and private aviation, aircraft maintenance, training, space, there's an opportunity for you. That being said, whenever I get the chance to talk about aviation with students at Embry-Riddle, I always like to take a minute and kind of give a plug for my segment of the business, and that's specifically FBOs and private aviation. So the National Business Aviation Association, NBAA, every year puts on an annual convention they call BASE. Every other year it's in Orlando, so for folks in Daytona Beach, it's pretty easy to get to, at least every other year. And there's always a contingent of Embry-Riddle students and faculty there. When I talk about the strength and diversity of the FBO and general aviation part of the industry, there's really no better way to demonstrate it than going to an NBAA convention and seeing it for yourself. It's one of the largest trade shows in the U.S. and brings together aircraft owners and operators and customers. So when you go to a base and see the scale of that show, the number of companies present, the number of people present, and the amount of money that's represented at that show, you'll see how diverse the business really is. I find myself oftentimes when I meet somebody from outside the aviation industry, having to kind of tell them what it is I do and what FBOs are, and one of the things I invariably end up telling people is, sometimes it's easier to describe kind of the output rather than the technical side. And so I tell people that, when you watch the news tonight and see that a factory is being built in your town, and that the executives from that company were in town announcing it, they probably flew through the FBO, right? In fact, they might have even signed the deal in the conference room of the FBO. When there's a big concert in town, the bands definitely came through the FBO, right? Um, and when the president's in town and steps off of Air Force One onto a set of stairs that has your company's name on it, that's just pretty cool. So if you're undecided about what part of the industry that you want to focus on, I'd highly encourage you to learn about the business aviation side. So, when we talk about the strength and diversity of the aviation aerospace industry, which, by the way, I think constitutes something like 5% of the U.S. GDP. So, just as a standalone industry, it is a massively impactful, segment of the industry on the overall economy. You gotta recognize the impact that COVID had on the business, right? And COVID clearly had a huge impact on aviation aerospace. I think some airline gurus have said that the disruptions to demand, caused by COVID and the associated travel restrictions were the biggest crisis ever in the aviation aerospace industry. That being said, 12 months on, we're seeing demand recovering. People are saying that the business will have, more or less fully recovered in the next couple of years, which is pretty astounding considering the shot that it took last year. And even the pilot shortage is predicted to return, by 2023, which tells you that it is a massively vibrant industry. Now, on my side of the business and on the FBO side in private aviation, COVID had a massive impact, at least early on. So February and March of last year, we saw demand for our services drop 80% almost overnight. It was shocking, and it was something that I certainly never anticipated experiencing in my career. There are a lot more small businesses on the general aviation side, and certainly there was a tremendous amount of pain felt. But with the support of trade groups like NATA and the support of the federal government in terms of programs like the PSP and PPP programs, by and large, the general aviation segment got through. And as it turns out, private aviation was really one of the first sectors to really recover. And so by Q4 last year, most FBOs were reporting that they were back to sort of 80 to 90% of peak levels, and now sort of now in 2021 we're really challenging 2019 pre-COVID figures. So again, a great testament to sort of the strength and diversity of the business, and even when given a shock, the likes of which none of us, ever anticipated, parts of the business are already recovered, and the others are anticipated to recover pretty quickly. So that's kind of my quick assessment of the diversity and strength of the aviation aerospace business, and despite the challenges of the last 12 months, there's just huge opportunity in the aviation aerospace field. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about today is the value of a solid business education to my career and to my experience of aviation aerospace. And I thought I would start by mentioning that my undergraduate degree is in history. So when I was a young man, I was planning on being an attorney, and as it turns out, history is a pretty good prep for going to law school, and that you learn to read a lot and research a lot and write a lot. So after I graduated, I took a year off to kind of prep for law school and take the LSAT and all that fun stuff. So while I was taking a year off of school, I worked for a airport authority, and airport authorities, by the way, are the entities that often manage public airports. And so several of the guys that I worked with had gone to Embry-Riddle, and in fact had gotten MBAs from Embry-Riddle, and so they had pretty cool jobs. And I thought, hey, if I don't get into law school, I'll maybe go to Embry-Riddle. So I took that year and took the LSAT, made my law school applications, got into a bunch of law schools. But meanwhile, I visited the campus at Daytona Beach, met a bunch of the faculty, met a bunch of the students, hung out at a cool bar called the Ocean Deck. I hope it's still there. And so then basically a month before starting law school, I basically said, you know what, I want to go to Embry-Riddle instead. And I can tell you, I have never once looked back. So, at Embry-Riddle, I learned some pretty important things. Learned how to work as part of a team. I think that's a key lesson that the MBA program teaches you. Learned a ton of foundational knowledge in business that I use literally every single day, accounting, finance, marketing, business strategy. And so when I talk about all the roles that I've had in business aviation, whether it's FBOs in the United States or FBOs overseas or airline ground handling or aircraft charter maintenance, every single one of those businesses is entirely different from each other. They all have their own business models and their own customers and their own drivers. But my ability to wrap my head around each of those businesses and to understand it and ultimately to help improve those businesses was really because of the skills I learned at Embry-Riddle. I also met a bunch of people, both students and faculty that continue to influence me today. It's been 23 years since I graduated, but I still keep up with lots of the folks that I went to school with. Some of them are my peers. Some of them are my competitors. I keep up with several professors that I went to, that I learned from. Shout out to Dr. Wagesback and Dr. Massey, by the way. So when I think about the importance of my business education, I got a great underlying education in sort of business fundamentals, and it really prepared me well for my career every step of the way. And as I've said a couple of times, I developed some lifelong friendships, that literally helped get me my start in the industry and have helped to continue to sustain me to this day. So as the business of Flight Week starts, I would encourage everybody to actively participate. So just looking at the agenda, for the week, there's some pretty cool stuff coming up. There's a webinar tomorrow on the business of space. There's one later on this week about the opportunities that are presented in crisis. There's also a chance for you to hear from some of your professors and talk about some of the books that they've written, and lots of other opportunities to sort of engage socially with your colleagues. So kind of in closing, it's an awesome industry, very diverse. There's a huge amount of opportunity, and you're preparing yourself well by getting a business degree from Embry-Riddle. So with that, I'm going to thank Shannon again for letting me participate and be part of this kickoff to the Business of Flight Week. And thank you guys for listening.
Thank you, Todd. You hit every bullet that we talked about, and I really appreciate that. So at this juncture, since we have plenty of time, does anyone have questions for Todd or comments. We have a really diverse group in the audience of faculty, students, and some of your contemporaries, it looks like. So if anyone has a question, I'll just let you unmute and ask. We have plenty of time. Anybody?
If nobody has a question, I can ask a question. Thank you for Todd for the presentation and for being with us today. My question is that in our curriculum, in the College of Business, I always feel that we don't give the attention to the general aviation industry and the kind of business that you are interacting with. Mainly because of the lack of expertise and lack of industry maybe help in this area. So any recommendations for us while you are speaking about how big is the market for students and so on? So where should we start?
I think it starts by having folks like me talk about the passion that we feel for the business. And I know my colleague Todd down in Florida runs Shelter Air, which is a very similar business to us, and we're all happy to come on campus and to share and help educate people about the opportunities. I also think NBAA is a great opportunity, particularly when it's in Orlando down the road. Giving people a chance to kind of see it. And it really is it's a huge sector, but it is also small by comparison to the commercial airline space. And so I think it's easy for people to kind of get wowed by the airlines, which I know lots of friends that have had awesome careers in the airline space, but really I think it starts with just sharing what we're all about and what the opportunities are about, and I for one, and I know my colleagues would be happy to do whatever we can to participate and to share that.
Thank you.
So, Joe, I got a question for you and the entire group. Can you guys hear me? You hear me okay? Yeah. One of the challenges that we're having in the FBO world is trying to find good people to enter into the FBO business, the FBO market. And a lot of the pushback we get is, there's an expectation, you graduate from college and you end up with a degree, but somebody really wants to get into this type of business. And just like Joe's background, I have the same background, started in some unconventional ways to get into this business, but in different jobs, we've taken on different jobs, and Joe and I could probably share some notes on some of the work that we started years ago. But Joe, maybe I think it'd be good to talk about entry-level position in this industry, because we're having a tough time trying to find good help. And it's not just about hiring somebody to work our front counter or somebody to work as a line serviceman pumping gas. It's really trying to find people that want to get into this business and start them somewhere, that whether it's through an internship. But we've had people come through, and I'm actually, we're looking at our bullpen right now for succession planning, for growth, and we're down. We have 60 open positions right now in Shelter. I have 60 open vacancies, majority of them in this entry level line service, front counter type positions. But we're seeing more and more people coming into those roles. We've identified some people that have started in those positions and that have developed to where we're starting to move them into more of the leasing administrators, into more of some project type stuff, getting them out of the line service. How do you, or from TAC Air, how do you guys work with trying to find the, the entry level positions and trying to find good people to get into the system, because this FBO business is only going to get busier and busier. We're building more, airplanes are getting bigger, more and more people are traveling private. The demand is there from the entry level position all the way up to, key senior level positions. And it takes time to get to those levels, but we're just trying to focus on how do we get the entry level folks in that come out of college, that come out of Embry-Riddle, that say, man, I want to work in the FBO world, but I don't want to be a line service person. So just open that up, because I think that's always a hot topic on how to get into this business.
Yeah, so I kind of chuckled, Todd. You could have been part of any one of our management meetings over the last 2 years, and the challenges that you guys are facing. The last 12 months notwithstanding, the low levels of unemployment have definitely challenged us. And we've really fought attrition. Training is very costly, and we've made adjustments to starting wage. We continue to make adjustments to our starting wage, trying to keep track and trying to maintain an attractive starting point. And I think the way I think about this business, that it is a fact that historically a lot of the folks that are in management kind of work their way up from the ramp or from the front counter, and that is true, and it's definitely hard to make a pitch to somebody who's spent a bunch of money getting a college education to come work for $15 an hour. I think there's always going to be opportunity for people to work their way up, but we in the last year or two, the truth is that you don't have to have grown up with a fuel hose in your hand to know how to manage people, when we look at what are the attributes of a good leader, it's often we can teach those skills. I've got a member of management that literally this week is working the front counter at one of our FBOs. The thinking being, I can teach somebody in the span of a couple of weeks the technical skills that they need to ultimately oversee, but it's the fundamentals, it's the education, it's can they think, can they lead, that are really the things that are going to help them to be successful in their career. Tying this back specifically to Embry-Riddle, there's a couple things that we're doing specifically with the assistance of Embry-Riddle. So as we look to develop that next group of leaders in our business, we're actually using Embry-Riddle's FBO management, FBO leader development course. So they have a curriculum. It's outside of the School of Business, but it's 6 or 7 modules that each take about a month, and we take young people and throw them through, and they learn about finance and accounting and fuel quality control and real estate, and then just last week, Shannon was telling me about a new certificate program that the College of Business is launching, which is sort of a mini MBA over the summer, and I've already got one of my senior leaders that's in the process of signing up for that. And so I think there's a ton of ways that we can take the folks that have not benefited from a traditional education and give them those skills, and then there's ways that we can take the folks that have that traditional education and give them the technical skills they need. But in both instances, I think Embry-Riddle has been a part of our solution to that.
So you've got a couple of questions that have popped up in the chat window. I don't know if you see them. Dr. Wagasback just wants to know if you're going to be at MRO at the end of the month, but then Owen and Pierre both have questions, if you can see them.
Okay. Dr. Wagsbeck, I will not be at MRO. I will definitely be at the base convention in Vegas, though. So Owen is asking, as business and aviation rebound, what should students and recent alumni consider joining this sector? Why should students and alumni consider rejoining the sector versus other sectors in the umbrella? Well, you know, I think that, you know, one point I would make it just to highlight some of my previous comments is that, you know, private aviation probably arguably took the biggest hit initially. You know, we saw airline volumes, you know, off by 50% last year. We saw business aviation volumes off initially by 80%, but it also was the first to come back, you know, and so, you know, I think of all the, while I think the entire business is pretty resilient, the private aviation sector has proven itself to probably be more resilient than others. And at the end of the day, you know, everybody's passionate about different things. You know, I've got a lot of friends that are super passionate about working in the big airline world. But you know, it's just a cool part of the business. So, you know, it's not everybody's bag, but you know, most people that get in it think it's pretty cool. So then Pierre is saying, I went on to the TAC Air website and do we do aircraft engine services? He did a internship at Lufthansa Technik, and it does sound similar to FBO services. So we do not directly do aircraft engine repairs. Typically, there are engine repair and overhaul companies that are dedicated to that. Companies like Dallas Airmotive, ERO. There's a bunch of really big companies that do that, and typically, like we operate a Part 145 repair station out in Salt Lake City, and typically we take the engines off and send them to somebody in that space, and they send them back. So it's not a part of the industry that I'm particularly close to, but again, you know, that's a whole nother segment of the business that I hadn't even talked about, but is also huge. So Peter is saying, and I guess this is actually a question directed to Owen about where's your DNA, and do you want to be part of a huge organization with the agility of Queen Mary, or want to be part of a team making a difference daily? You know, and that is, you know, another cool thing about this business. You know, I worked for in the FBO space, a large public company that had over 10,000 employees. And now I work for a family business. It's admittedly a large family business, but a family business with one owner and shareholder. You know, and you know, the opportunity to do the same thing in the context of, you know, big companies or, you know, small family businesses. You know, you really have your opportunity to kind of take your pick of cultures that you want to be part of.